Check, check. Check, check. Check 1, 2.
Good evening and welcome to the October 9th, 2019 Planning Board meeting for the town of Raymond. The Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum. Start roll call. Mike, start with you.
Mike D'Arcangelo here.
Bruce Sanford.
Ed Kranich.
Robert O'Neill.
Greg Foster.
Kyle Bancroft.
Kevin Woodbury.
This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you are unable to see or hear. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. We have one application today from Keystone Investment Group. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances or state law. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand at the microphone, state their name, address, and affiliation with the application for opposed or neutral. All persons speaking shall address the chairman. Any conversations must be held in abeyance until after the board has formally adjourned. After the board votes on the merits of each application, it will prepare a written notice of decision, because the notice of decision may substantially affect any appeals rights. And also, as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending the meeting with regard to a specific application not leave until the board has completed its discussions. Appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with the Supreme Court or as otherwise provided by law within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that the board's records evidences your appearance this evening in opposition as a basis for your opposition. Right. So our first new business is the Keystone Investment Group, which is second appearance, right, on this?
It is, yep.
Yep, and just I'm gonna skip the town and go right to you.
Sure. So Dustin Roma with DM Roma Consulting Engineers representing Keystone Investment Group LLC, proposing a construction of an additional duplex building, 1455 Roosevelt Trail. We were in front of you previously as a sketch plan application, and since then we had put together grading and drainage plan, a final septic system design for a leach field over in this area, and utility design for the proposed duplex. We did have an opportunity to review Mr. Seymour's memo, along with Wayne's memo as well from the fire department's perspective. We met with all of us together in Scott's office last Thursday and went over the plans and how we intended to address some of those comments. A couple of those comments had actually been brought up at the planning board meeting, but we hadn't fully addressed them at the time of the submission. So these plans that you have in front of you here tonight address those last few remaining comments that Jim had bulleted out in his review memo here. So I think most efficient thing, I'm just going to go down here and just kind of explain how each of those have been addressed. And again, these are all discussed at our meeting with Jim and Wayne on Thursday and then reflected on these plans. So one question was about the existing well and whether or not it would be sufficient to provide water to both the buildings. So we did show a potential second well location that could be installed that's outside of the 100-foot setbacks of the leach fields, and kind of designated that area for an additional well if it's needed. A lot of our discussion focused around fire protection needs for the project. One of the concerns was whether or not this driveway here was going to be deep enough for a fire truck to be able to pull in and back up and exit the site without hitting the garage. So we've added a second hammerhead turnaround in this location. What that does is basically this portion of the driveway would function as geometry as if it was a dead-end road. So we've got this additional turnaround area that we're going to sign as no parking, and it would be, in addition to this area, which we're also going to call no parking. So a fire truck could come in, back up, leave this way, or in the event they come in this way, they could certainly come in, back up, and come back down. This area serves as a turnaround area as well, so again, we've got multiple points where vehicles can come in and turn around, even larger vehicles, and exit out without having to back out onto 302. We've also revised the plans to remove the overhead electrical line that's coming to the existing duplex building. We're going to be installing it underground, so when we run buried electrical to this building, we're going to also run it underground and swap out the meter here on the building to bring that underground. The other item, there was a memo that Wayne had put out on the 4th, which addressed kind of what we had talked about on the meeting last Thursday. Specifically that the existing duplex building, as a condition of the construction of the new building, would have a addressable fire alarm installed in the building now. And in the future, if renovations were done to that building, then we would install a sprinkler system at that time. But that's in lieu of, because we weren't proposing any changes to that building right now, so we wouldn't have to go in and completely retrofit it with a sprinkler system. But at a time in the future, if work is to be done, then we would do it then.
When you're changing occupants, something like that.
Right, well, if any physical work is to be done on the building, then as part of the building permit application, that would trigger the need to upgrade that building with a sprinkler system.
Okay, but that would be put off till sometime in the future when you had work to do.
Right, but for now, we'd put an addressable alarm system on there so that if there were a fire, that it'd be notified at the
Right.
fire department,
Okay.
so. Yep. And then all the widening and everything is similar to what we had proposed previously. All that information will be added to the site plan as conditions of approval. What we propose to do is wait for Jim to basically just completely draft his findings of fact. That way we can mirror those onto the site plan, and we'll make sure to include all those on there as well. Number 3, verification of septic design by CEO. We did talk about that at our Thursday meeting, and it was just a question about the proximity to the other system, and I believe Scott indicated everything was okay with what we had proposed. Number 4, crowding of the driveway. We've included grades on here, which actually sends the water off the sides of the driveway rather than sending it right down the middle. So the grading's been updated on this plan. The removal of the existing roadside culvert. Jim's just asked us to confirm with DOT that they're okay with us getting rid of that culvert. That culvert had been buried for many years. They've just gone out and started ditching some of that area and had that completed, so this culvert's now exposed. But there's a culvert here that goes underneath 302, so any water that comes down the hill actually goes under the road, because this is a lower culvert than this one. So I think this was done after the fact, and that's why that one being buried didn't create any drainage issues. So, but we will just, we've sent a request into DOT, and we'll just get confirmation that they have no issues.
No water comes the other way into that?
No, because, well, basically, this all goes in the other direction here. So,
Okay.
so any water that falls on this side of the driveway goes this way. Anything that comes on this side is gonna go directly through that culvert, so. The letter of financial capacity will be provided as a condition. That's number 6. Number 7 was just to add phosphorus point calculations to the plan, which we did on the site plan. Number 8 was to add this additional drain. That's the one that I mentioned was referenced at the last meeting that we neglected to add. So we have added a type F catch basin here in the back corner, along with a drain that brings it underneath the driveway and brings it out here to the level spreader. So that will handle the water that comes down off the hill, will all get collected there and piped underneath the road, so it won't flow over the pavement. Number 9 deals with the placement of underground utilities to the existing building, which we are now proposing. And number 10 has to do with the maneuverability of the vehicles in and around through here. So again, adding the additional hammerhead addresses that previous question. So, so I believe with that, that's just a highlight of how we've again addressed these last few comments on this plan, and I'd like to hear any questions that you may have about this, and we'll continue to work with Jim after this just to make sure, again, all these conditions and everything get added to the plan prior to the board signing anything.
Dustin, just as a point, we've been seeing a lot of you. The board has like a long-standing rule not to accept things the day of the,
Yep.
because we just don't have enough time
Sure.
to view it over and things kind of get passed through. This is a little bit different because it's really just addressing the conditions that were
Right.
already discussed. But in the future, just so you know, it's not normally that we would accept something to review the day of
Mhm.
the meeting.
Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
question about the septic system. Because it's a proprietary system, it doesn't require the square footage to get the same yield, I guess, as a standard one?
Right, so there's different sizing criteria if you do a stone bed, if you do plastic chambers, or if you do Elgin, so they've
So
got,
there's a factor that
correct.
converts, okay.
Yep.
So can I just ask about the well? Are you gonna, is that gonna be tested in terms of how much water is coming in there prior to everyone moving in and then maybe finding out that it's not gonna work, or?
Yeah, so basically, the plan there is to, we'll consult with the well driller and look at the yield of that particular well. If it's in question, we'll drill a new well, because we don't want to have water pressure issues for tenants, so,
So you would do a yield test on an existing well?
yeah.
And there's no cistern involved now. You're gonna run it right off the well.
Correct.
How old is the existing septic system?
I'm not sure exactly when this was built. I'm not sure the age of that system. I mean, the soils out here are fairly good. We've got area, this is the location of that existing field. If there were to be a failure at some point in the future, we've got room kind of on adjacent sides to replace it if we needed to.
Fire department is okay with both the design of the driveway and also the issue of the existing building, so that what you're planning to do is sufficient to satisfy fire on the existing building. I know that it's pre-existing, so you don't want to have to go to the expense of putting in sprinkler now, so fire's okay with delaying that until you do maintenance or some kind of
Yeah, I mean,
renovation.
I could ask Wayne to
Yeah.
answer
What's
that,
this?
just so
Mike, we'll get
I won't
Wayne.
speak for him.
Yep. If you-
Yeah, we met with Dustin, and this was an alternative that we came up with to the fire alarm system. By doing the fire alarm system, we're getting a quick notification to hopefully minimize the amount of water that we might need in the case of fire in the existing building, with the caveat that any remodeling, anything going on with that existing building will trigger it, requiring a sprinkler system at that time.
Thanks.
Plus you're going underground with the electrical.
And underground with the electric, which is a huge asset to us.
Any other concerns, Wayne, that were not addressed?
When we talk about no parking, it's fire lane, no parking, so we need to be very specific that way. That the signs say fire lane, no parking. Dustin's seen an example of what we're looking for signs, so that would be the only other thing.
Okay. You're up. Okay.
As far as they asked a question about the septic system, I looked at that first building was built in year 2000, so it's relatively new.
Any other questions of the board? I know this, I've got to, okay, just for a moment, I'm going to open the public hearing and then close the public hearing, so nobody from the public. So, I was not at the last meeting. Did you go through all of the step-by-step process here, or do we need to do that? Each of the, and actually a little bit, was it tabled or from the last, and was the application?
It was a sketch plan last time, so this is the first.
Okay,
yeah.
so the application has not been deemed complete
Indeed,
yet?
had not, no, not
Okay.
yet.
So actually, we're a little bit behind. And the first thing I'd like to do is then take a motion to deem the application complete.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor? And all that's opposed? Okay. Then my next question is, did you get a chance to go through each of these with,
No,
so,
we didn't go through the ones that came on Jim's memo from,
from the criteria?
Yeah, no, they didn't do
We
that
have not
last
done
meeting.
that. Okay.
far into it.
All right. So the application is reviewed under subdivision regulations, Article 1. I'm going to, I think, we're pretty close, and the board's pretty familiar with this, fairly similar to the other project, if I'm correct, right? So I'm not going to, unless there's objections, I'm not going to ask for a vote for each individual item. I'm just going to read through them, what the item is. If there's somebody that would like to ask a question on it, or feels we need more discussion, please stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through this. Item alpha is will not result in undue water or air pollution. In making this determination, the planning board shall consider the elevation of the land and the nature of the soils, the slope of the land and the applicable state and local health and water resources. And I think that from your discussion that has been accomplished. Has sufficient water available for reasonably foreseeable needs in the subdivision. That's being addressed with the second well, and you're going to do some tests on the well itself. Item Charlie will not cause any unreasonable burden on the existing water supply if one is to be utilized. And is there a sufficient distance between the wells that exist right now?
Just to provide adequate water supply?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're proposing a separate location that is...
No, to the adjacent properties.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Delta will not cause unreasonable soil erosion or a reduction in capacity of the land to hold water. I think that has been addressed. Will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion. And this 8.6% slope's okay with you, right?
I'm sorry, what was
The 8.6% slope of the driveway?
Yes.
Okay. For the record, Wayne indicates yes. Foxtrot will provide for adequate soil and sewage waste disposal. That's been done. Gulf will not cause any unreasonable burden on the ability of the town of Raymond to dispose of solid waste or sewage. Hotel will not place an unreasonable burden on the ability of the town of Raymond to provide municipal or governmental services. India will not have an undue adverse effect on the scenic or natural beauty of the area. And you submitted photos of the area so that we can determine that? I'm only kidding.
I don't believe so, but, you know, we saw it on the sidewalk for the one next door.
Juliet is in conformance with the subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, floodplain management ordinance, and other duly adopted town ordinances. Yeah, that's been done. Here, the subdivider has adequate financial and technical capacity, meaning that's going to stay as a condition. Lima, whenever situated entirely or partially within the watershed of any pond or lake, or within 250 feet of any wetland, great pond, river, that's not applicable. Mike will not alone or in conjunction with existing activities adversely affect the quality, quantity of groundwater or aquifers. November, based on the federal emergency management plan, boundary waterway maps and flood issuance. Information presented to the applicant whether subdivision is in the floodplain area is not. All freshwater wetlands, that's not applicable. Any river, stream, or brook, it's not applicable. Quebec, the subdivision will provide for adequate stormwater management, and that has been done, right? You get all that, yeah. Romeo, if any lots in the proposed subdivision, that's not applicable. The long-term cumulative effect of the proposed subdivision will not unreasonably increase Great Ponds. That's done. And for any proposed subdivision at Crossmith, that's not applicable. Okay. Bring any other questions to mind going through?
None here.
All right.
So our only conditions are K. That's it?
Financial capacity,
Yeah.
yep. And let's see, and
All of the fire department's comments are going to be added as conditions of approval, so they're enforceable as well.
yeah. And what about, and the culvert, we're gonna just leave as,
Yeah, you could just say that requires just confirmation that DOT
DOT
approves the
confirmation.
removal of the culvert.
That 24-inch that crosses 302 is operational, functional?
Yeah, like I said, the culvert for this driveway's been buried for years,
Yeah.
so it just got dug out this year.
all right. Well, when you're talking about Jim's comments, fire department's okay, but Jim's comments are,
They were the high points of the conditions of approval that he had in here. These were some of his concerns that he had with the crowning of the road
and that's been taken care of.
yeah.
So we have item 6, the financial capacity, we have the culvert from the DOT, and we have the fire department's
Mhm.
memo, conditions, right? As noted in your letter, would that work? They're all in there, aren't they?
There's 2 letters. Yeah.
There's actually 3 memos you might have up in front of you.
I've got one.
Did you have the September or the October?
October 1.
October.
October. So.
Wayne, could you just go to, I'm sorry, could you go to the mic?
Sure.
Fire then.
So, there was 3 memos that were generated. The first 2 dealt with a number of the conditions. The third one dealt with, the third memo dealt with language to address the fire alarm system, the sprinkler system, and for the existing building. So, those conditions are all laid out in 3 memos. We'll need to condense them into
Right.
a list. Do you need that cleaned up from us to you, or?
We would need them cleaned up, yeah.
Okay, we can do that. We
Okay.
can combine all that together and submit a new memo that has it all spelled out.
That would be
for you.
perfect, yeah.
And
That work for you? Yeah.
Add that no parking fire lane.
Yeah, and that's in one of those memos, the no parking fire lane, so.
So we can work with the fire department conditions, 3 memos, September, October, November? Not November yet.
How soon I can get them?
No, just the dates, rough, I mean, not only an exact date,
Yep.
but you have them, that would be great.
September 9th. was the
September
first one.
9th, October 1st, and October 4th. were the
Perfect.
Dates of the 4 memos. And I'll combine those all into one.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Everybody's happy? Who wants to give it a shot?
I'll give it a shot.
All right.
I move that the applicant is complied with the subdivision ordinance. Is that right?
Yep.
With the following conditions, that they confirm with DOT of the culvert to be removed, the financial capacity. Is that good enough?
Yep.
And the conditions as per the fire and rescue unit, the revised memo to combine the 3 memos from September 9th, October 1st, and October 4th.
Perfect.
Is that everything?
That's everything.
Do we need to have the well capacity statement in there also? Number 1?
Would that become staff review?
Because it hasn't been
It
confirmed
hasn't been
yet.
confirmed yet.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that probably ought to be in there too.
In addition,
Friendly amendment?
yeah,
Yeah.
that we include the capacity of the wells, that they be confirmed by staff.
Yep.
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? I'm just going to abstain since I'm, oops, okay. I'm going to abstain because I missed some of the discussion. Motion pass.
Thank you so much.
You're all set.
You know, we're not reading minutes anymore.
Well, that's my next thing that I'm going to describe. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't even pay you to say that, did I?
I think somebody is more than overwhelmed with their work.
So, yeah, discussion on minutes. Here, it's a lot of work for Mary to go and produce those kind of narrative portion of the minutes. And she produces them from the video, that is being, from the video record. And in my experience, every time there has been an issue, either by the applicant or the board asking for Scott or Chris to go back and research, they have always gone to the minutes to find out when the meeting was held, and then gone to the video record to see exactly what the discussion was. So I've been talking with Mary, and I'm wondering why in our minutes we don't simply have the application that was reviewed, the vote that it either passed or failed, and then simply directing anybody who wants the additional information to go to the video recording. And I mean, that's where the person is 9 times out of 10 going to go to anyway, to find out what, because you want to know the flavor of the discussion and not necessarily what Mary has picked out of the discussion. So that's my proposal to the board. What I don't know is whether or not that's legal, whether or not the lawyers will, what the lawyers will want to see.
At the town meeting, I think, wasn't it passed that the official record of all the committees is
Yes.
the video recording?
Yes.
It is,
Official
it
record.
is, it is kind of a courtesy to do the minutes in written form. We just would want to make sure that it's okay that we don't have to do it at all, or
Just give a summary, little.
very quick,
And
yeah,
then
very
elaborate
brief
on
summary,
the
vote,
agenda.
yeah,
Right.
like I
One or
said,
two
what was
page
brought up, vote, and was it passed?
Right.
Yeah.
My only concern is that if something if an applicant challenges the decision of the board, it goes to Superior Court. And will Superior Court, will they accept the video as the record, or do they want to vote it on specific minutes? And, I would think that the video is going to work, but I think we probably should ask the question.
Right, I would think so, because that's what the town voted on. It's in part of the ordinances now.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, the narrative of the minutes it's never as accurate as what the video, has
Right,
in it. I
exactly.
mean,
No, it's just,
the narrative is
When you
kind of
go
like
through it
Trump's
5 times to catch the point.
recategorization
Yeah.
of whatever he's talking about,
Yeah, yeah.
Mary, what does Sue do? She doesn't do everything, does she? Or
For the select board, she gives a lot of detail because that's what they want.
okay.
They often call her and send her back to looking in the minutes and see what happened.
I actually send and it's not as good as what you'd like, the transcripts of the meeting. There's a service that we put the video through, and they give us a transcript, written transcript.
It's quite entertaining.
It is sometimes when it comes out with, because it's done by computer, and it comes back, but that gives at least something for you to go on versus having to write down everything as the meeting goes.
What
Look at the
about,
video.
maybe ask your lawyer if it would be acceptable at the start of the meeting, instead of having the narrative, the minutes, have a statement submitted by the person who does the filming and the cataloging of the video, that the video of the previous minutes of the last planning board meeting has been checked, it's operational, it's on file, and they give you a statement, and we just read that statement as part of the opening in place of the minutes,
and then go
that-
into the record.
and that kind of puts a stamp on it.
Yep. I mean, we have technology working for us and not
Yep.
doubling up.
Yeah, like I said, I usually get it done the next day.
Yes, he does.
Like
Yeah.
the one, last night's meeting was up, today, so.
Oh, the video.
The video, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I know.
and what we do is we actually, so the video goes and it's hosted, it's on YouTube, so anybody can get it. You just have to go to our website and click on it, and it pops it into our website, and you view it there, but it's actually out on YouTube. And then we create 2 permanent, long-term DVD copies, one which is held at the town office and one is held at my office right now. So in case there's a fire or something, we have a backup copy. So it's actually better than the written minutes, which only are held in one place, and so it's worked out pretty good. We have over 1,000 meetings that have been, put out there.
Should we send a memo to the town attorney just to confirm that, what we want to do? to
Right.
Have just a written summary of,
A quick
Or
1 or
minutes.
2 sentence summary.
So
Yeah,
Mary
and
could
then
confirm, because
the,
I send
Yes,
the
I send
video
her,
will be the official
right.
minutes.
the notification that, with the transcript, which means the meeting is out there, so that would be my confirmation to her that the meeting is done and up and running.
Scott?
So basically, you just kind of would want to know, how do you approve the minutes basically during the meeting itself?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, I can ask him that if you,
Yeah, would you? I
Yeah,
think
Yeah,
that's,
I mean, if you needed a further email from me saying it's up there and running, I could do that too.
I think, I think we probably
Yeah.
would need something to say that the recording has in fact
Been placed up.
been
online.
placed and
Yeah.
it's operational, we can see it, we can read
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And that would be what, in Vice, you know, looking at approving the minutes, we would just be approving that statement.
Mhm.
Does that sound okay with the board? Is that, I don't think we need a motion, but I think
okay.
we're all, I think, all in agreement.
Yep.
That
So
we
I
can
could
move
send
that
you
way.
an email saying it's been placed online.
Yep, you can send me the email saying it's placed, and Mary, so that she can, when she writes the agenda, she can put it, as the first item of the agenda will be to approve, that CD as our record. And then I would suggest, Mary, you hold off on the minutes, if you have not, until we get.
We have received one complaint about the minutes not being up to date,
Well,
so that's why, I mean, if we can get this answered quicker the better.
yes, well, I would
Yeah.
say,
Because I have 4 hours blocked out tomorrow to put
Well-
everything else aside and do that.
I think if you can get an answer tomorrow, why don't, well, I tell you what, Mayor, why don't from the board, we will tell you to hold off on the production of the minutes until we hear back from the attorney.
That's fine.
Is that all right with the board? Everything, okay? Okay. What else do we have?
The subdivision loop roads,
Yeah, subdivision loop roads. Have we done anything on that? And I have to admit, I ran out of house without that folder.
well, I looked into it a little bit, and in our regulations for the road construction, it does discuss that particular issue. And any development that is gonna generate 200+ trips per day will have to have at least 2 street connections with an existing public street.
Right.
So it does cover, you know, a major amount of what would be our concern. I'm not sure what the factor is for trips per day per unit. You know, I looked up some old
Yeah, some
stuff about
calculation,
lines.
right.
Yeah, but
This is what I have in my folder. Any of use.
Oh, this is the,
Previous things. that
yeah,
Jim
that's,
had
Yes,
Jim
pointed
okay,
gave us
right.
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
from other
Thank you.
towns.
I think that is specifically addressing a true loop road, you know, where we are looking at say, 85 with a big subdivision, that it would go like that. I think what we are more interested in is a road that would connect this to 2 different roads. And this may or may not be the same subdivision.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what,
if this did have the two connections here and here, this really wouldn't be necessary, and for these people, it would be, well, actually, for probably most of them, they wouldn't like that.
no, they're not gonna like it at all.
No.
No.
It's gonna,
And I think that's one of the,
would be there.
the thing you have
Right.
to worry
So
about
it
is,
wouldn't be connected at all.
are you going to, make it into a shortcut, you know, for people to cut through,
correct,
a residential area, which you don't want to do.
which we don't wanna do. But the advantage would be if the other division is here, right, then for trash collection, for bus pickup, you could come through this way, or maybe even eventually go through that way. You know, that's the advantage of reducing the mileage for both, too many ways on here, but for both emergency response,
Yeah, and service.
trash collection services, bus routes. But you're right, these guys would not be happy. And I don't know none of the ordinances, I think, address that. Have you, come across it, Scott, as to,
No, you basically, you buy the lot where you buy the lot. If that happens to be the one where the most of traffic is gonna be coming in and out of.
no, we're thinking, so if you, what would have been an example? You know, not a good example, but remember not that long ago, we approved a subdivision, it was connected to another subdivision by a road that wasn't used very often. Do you remember that one?
There was one off of,
121 Oak Ridge, I think.
Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
Oak
right.
Ridge Ridge, yeah.
Yeah,
But that was a dispute on that one, wasn't it, as to whether or not, so that continuity, it was basically gated off,
correct,
yeah.
correct.
The other road it connected to was a dead end, wasn't it? Or did it?
Well, it connected up to Daggett,
Daggett Drive
yeah,
and Oak
Yeah.
Ridge.
Oak Ridge and up
Right.
to Daggett. And I'd be honest with you, I wasn't here at that time, I don't know the circumstances why it was closed off.
Oh, well, that's unimportant.
Yeah.
It was just, it was that type of arrangement is that we would be looking at a subdivision going in where we would be either mandating or some way saying that we would like this connected
Mm-hmm,
to this other subdivision,
mm-hmm.
right? Whether it can be is the issue, and
Yeah, because,
or do we not even address it to another subdivision, but we just lay the groundwork now to have a road dead end at the end of the property that can be used at some future time if other land is developed?
yeah, because right now, there is one subdivision, a gentleman owns lands that abuts to it, and right now, there's a right-of-way that comes in and stops at his property. He was interested in seeing that he could possibly do a subdivision on his lot and attach to that and be able to use that road. However, it gets kind of complicated, because right now, he'd either have to get the people that are already in phase one to sign off on it, as well as the general contractor to give him access to use that. And I don't know if we'd have to word it somehow that they would be given that, or,
It would be a private road that he's connecting to?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That makes
see,
it a
that's
lot more
where, yeah,
complicated, yeah.
yeah. And that's the other thing, is are some of these roads, is Raymond going to be a little more open to
Yes,
our town roads if they're connectivity?
well, that's what I got from the selectmen.
Okay.
I don't want to say unanimously, but I did get an overwhelming,
Okay.
I did get a yes, we are receptive to accepting the town road, which may be, in the situation we're talking about, that other subdivision then that is maintaining that road, in their road association, would be able to turn it over to the town. And so they would not be as,
Yeah, wouldn't be, yeah, they'd actually free them from their burden from,
right,
Yeah, but is the town gonna accept the roads and the conditions that they're in, because the town specs or
They-
what generally?
they're kind of, there are a couple of them out there that have done this rock sandwich thing that is really not, Nate said he didn't like it.
Yeah,
And there was a question as to whether or not the town would ever accept that.
right.
But, I mean, as far as the width and that, when they put some of these roads in, they already meet, except for paving, they already meet this town
Which is a
standards
huge,
anyway.
when you go from a private road to using a good gravel cap to a pavement, I mean, so who would say that we have one of these guys that abuts a new subdivision?
Right.
Well-
The new subdivision willing to pave, it's, or it's gonna hook into that second subdivision. Will the town take on that road without it being paved, with half of it being up to spec and the other half of the exit they tie into not be?
right, probably no,
Yeah.
Right.
would be my guess.
Yeah,
Probably should.
But they should, yeah, but I mean, that would be something we could, we could work into the ordinance as to whether or not, what level the town would accept to that adjacent road. It's hard to quantify it as far as how much money it would save the town, but it may, in some cases, be a considerable amount of money, over the long haul.
and then going forward, if we decide to do that too, I mean, that could be one of them that they do put paving in the new subdivision roads,
Right,
so that going forward, you just have to tackle the old ones and figure out how to way to deal with them as to when they come up, as to how you could deal with them. Is it something that can be phased in, or something that would have to work for the existing roads that are
Right.
not paved?
I mean, my concern, as a general contractor and looking at small parcels that I develop, it seems like it's gonna be a burden you know,
On the developer?
Yeah, I mean, because when you have to switch from going to a nice gravel cap to a pavement, and then if they were to, you know, look at a sidewalk thing, which Raymond doesn't really have them, but there's always, you open up these, you know, now requirements. So if I wanted to go do the same job I do out here in Portland, it just, you're priced out of it relatively quickly when you start adding in pavement and the extra cost to get there, and then to not know, I mean, if you guys require it to come out, if you don't own that land already, you've already tabled that project. I mean, unless you have the land or the ability to hook into, you know, parcel, and then you put the developer in a situation where he's gonna have to come up with another budget in order to get that access out, you know? So I think that if it was gonna be looked at, we should look at it as a town. What are we really gonna gain from putting that ordinance in effect? I mean, as a whole picture, and what are we gonna do to the contractors and the building? Is it gonna just say, hey, you know, for a long time, Portland didn't have any subdivisions, you know, because there's so much stuff that you have to meet in criteria. Right. Now it makes sense, the market's, you know, doing well, so they're building again. I'm just worried about, you know, keeping everybody out of building, whether it be a 4-lot subdivision or I think there should be some kind of scale to that, whether
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be even applicable to a minor subdivision.
Yep.
Because it just, there wouldn't be the land there to support it. I think we're talking about, you know, a major subdivision.
Yep.
That going in, you know, in like, you know, the 200 lot, somewhere 200, 100, whatever we would
Sure.
look at as a major subdivision.
Yeah, and I could see that.
Right. No, I wasn't even thinking, because I don't even think it would be applicable for a minor subdivision.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't have the land
Right.
to connect it.
Yeah, that would be my only concern, is just on the smaller scale of the subdivision is, you know, we don't want to burden the contractor any more than he has to be. I'm a contractor, so that's just my opinion on it.
So if I can just follow up on that, I think it's really good to get a contractor's perspective. I live on Daggett Drive. Our road is in pretty good shape. So we've paved it once and paved over it, and it's held up well. The neighboring subdivision that we're gated off of, the road's horrendous. There's no, they didn't put in a decent sub-grade under it, so they pave it, and 2 years later, it's got big wheel dents from the heavy trucks, or it's falling apart, it's alligating off, and that kind of thing. So it seems to me that those people are have been pretty unprotected. You know, and nowadays, in today's world, people come and buy a house that's in a subdivision, maybe they're from out of state, they're used to a lot of protections that we aren't perhaps providing them up here in Raymond. Like, that subdivision comes to mind fiercely to me, because I feel so sorry for those people. This one guy lives at the end of the road, and he's always, you know, he's on, I don't even know how they're gonna maintain it, you know, as years go by. So, if we're gonna do this sort of thing, I think it might, but this would be real onerous on the developer. I think we might want to put more stringent requirements on road construction, which of course are going to add a lot to cost, but especially if we're thinking about blending subdivisions. If someone starts a subdivision, and I think it seems to me we ought to make them do the road better than maybe we have been doing it, but we also maybe should think about making a condition of approval that it's possible, if another subdivision is developed, that you have to link up to it.
Right, yeah.
Because certainly in my neighborhood, people would be really opposed to it unless the town were gonna take over both roads, which would be a huge advantage to that other subdivision.
Right.
So I think those are two considerations that we'd have to sort of do. One, make it a condition of approval, but also, I think it only makes sense if the town's gotta take those roads over because of the huge disadvantage of losing the privacy that a lot of people buy into a subdivision for.
Can't
So
tie into a
there's some big
substandard road.
issues.
You need to have it, you know, in a good condition.
Yeah, as,
Well, can subdivisions be developed with private road criteria now?
Yes.
They can. Maybe we should start thinking about requiring town minimums for subdivisions, for road development.
for a major subdivision.
Yeah, as I say, it all depends on the number of lots.
Right.
If they get up to a certain number, they gotta meet town standards
It's the
anyway.
same-
It's, again, you kinda gotta decide, I guess, as to where that,
Where the threshold
where the
is.
threshold's
Yeah,
gonna
but
be.
the problem with that, if they start off with, with, you know, a very small subdivision and they build a private road criteria in, then they want to expand it and they have to go back out and rip the private road out and full depth recreate it, you know, to bring it up to town standard. Maybe just requiring the town standard for any subdivision from the get-go, it's gonna be a minimal extra cost, really, when you're building the road. If you have to dig down another 3 inches or whatever and put in 3 inches more of gravel, it's not gonna be a huge deal, as opposed to having to go back out and dig it all out and full depth reconstruct it.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter, I mean, Jim and I do that when somebody comes in anyway for a small one, that we recommend, even though they could do private way or a backlot standard, to actually do the next criteria up for the road, just in case they ever wanted to lengthen the road.
Well, either that, or if they insist they only want to have a private road development from the start, that they can't subdivide it later, create a subdivision later on. They have to make that choice, you know.
Well, I guess if they're willing to redo the road, then they might as well be allowed to, you know, put in more units.
Well, it's just the expense. It's a lot less expensive to do it, you know, put in the extra gravel right when you're doing it from the first place, as past going and have to rip it all out.
But maybe that's a choice we leave to that developer.
Do they have to rip it all out?
No,
Well,
I
it
don't think
depends
so.
on this, a lot of times, if they don't have the right subbase, they may have to, but it may just be as much as, you know, it all depends on what the shape the road is. If it's got a terrible subbase, then you're talking about a lot of money, tearing it up, digging down, redoing everything. Whereas, which you're gonna run into on some of these older roads if they try to connect some of them, but.
That's where it'd be primarily the older roads where they were just improved logging roads, or
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
they're not
Yeah.
building anything now that can't be,
that'd be something to
Just
look at to
that.
see, because we're not the only town that has to deal with these, is how other towns are
Yeah,
bringing
there's
some
5
of
of the
these,
towns that have it on the books.
that bring these older roads. How do they do it? I mean, I know in Gorham, even if you lived on the end of the private way, if you wanted to build on there, you had to bring that whole road up to town standards.
That's right, you
Otherwise
were at Gorham, right?
Yep.
And Gorham has this
Yeah, they had to,
ordinance on the books.
you had to bring it up the whole distance of the road if you wanted to build, if you built on,
How
even at
did-
the very end of it.
How did it work?
Mixed reviews, but again, Gorham had the benefit of a lot of people wanting to build there, so developers were willing to put that extra money in to do that if it was worth their, they would measure it to be worth their while that they would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And just because that they knew that it would be nothing that they would have to sit on, it would go as quick as they could get it on the market, so you could get away with it, get out of there reasonably with a reasonable profit, that it wouldn't bother you as much. But if individuals, some people didn't build on their lot because of it. But that was just individual lots, but.
Right.
I mean, you might run into that. We've got some of these roads here that some sections are really good, some sections are bad. It's just hard to do that because a lot of times you don't want to put that burden on that one single person to improve that whole road just so they can build a house at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though half of it's in great shape and the other half is not. So I think Wyndham's doing something like that now, though. They're trying to clean up some of those older roads like that. But
So Scott, the way that worked, as I recall, is like 1 to 5 houses was a certain threshold, and then 7 houses brought it up to another threshold. You had to build a road better because there'd be more traffic and it would wear out quicker.
Yeah, that's
So
where-
if someone had 5 houses in there and they wanted to put the 6th house, that put them past that first threshold, and then they'd have to do the whole road.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, it sort of made sense. I mean, nothing's perfect, that's for sure. But then that would be sort of the choice that the next guy would have, and it would allow the first 5 people to come in and not have to put as much money in. As,
Yeah, right.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having one threshold for the whole town, that would be really quite expensive. You look at 5 compared to 50, and 5 houses compared to 50, you're gonna have a lot less traffic, a lot less wear and tear. Therefore, you don't have to put such a nice road. that made sense to me, but certainly not perfect.
I think a lot of it's gonna come down to is if the town decides to get on board with taking these roads, what are they gonna expect to see out of it? Are they gonna pavement, or we, you know, that's how I would figure that it would be measured, is that, okay, now we're having this discussion that if we build it as a contractor, the town will take it, what's it gonna cost, and what's it gonna take to bring up, are you guys gonna require curbs, are we gonna require, you know, because that's where things get added on to, well, I like this, I like that, and then it just gets, you know, priced, some projects will just not, you know, get off the
Right.
paper.
I did not talk to the selectmen about that, but my feeling was, from what their comments was, that they were expecting it to be paved.
Right.
I don't think they were expecting sidewalks
Sure.
or curbs.
Yep.
But they were expecting it to be paved.
Yep.
I mean, that might be a good input, to get something from Nate on that as well. Nate White, as far as what he'd like for, if, you know, for subdivision, what they were gonna.
Whether they would,
what they
as far as the road
require.
acceptance goes? Yep.
And
Well, we certainly should ask.
does our town guys have the capacity, looking out 10 years, we switch to this, and then, you know, say this cycle continues, and then another cycle, are we gonna be able to keep up with this if, you know, we keep approving subdivisions? We have some space in town, I think that we still have a lot of area that
yes.
can be developed. You know, what's the capacity of the town if they set the rules and everybody starts following them? Are they gonna be able to keep up with that extra work? Are they gonna be able to keep up with, you know, everything that goes into maintaining, you know, all that,
the roads.
snow plowing, you know, ditching, so on?
Yep. Yeah. I think the answer to that was a yes. And I
Well,
think-
P and K's taking
Yeah.
care of the plan. We'll see how they do this year, because I hear that they're rolling out, you know, and it's a new plan this year, so I'm interested to see, you know, how that keeps up. I got full faith in them, don't get me wrong, but, you know, we'll see what happens.
I think the trade-off to that is, you know, a lot like what Mike was saying, the trade-off is that the town's not gonna be getting people, that were expecting a road, and it's deteriorating regularly, and they
Yeah.
have no option
Right.
to be able to get it fixed, because the neighbors don't wanna fix it.
Right, yeah, and that's definitely, you know, something we see a lot of, you know, and that's unfortunate, and I can see that side of it as
Yeah.
well. It'll be, I think that is a bigger picture, we need to see, you know, what's the benefit of enacting this? What's the real, I mean, we've talked about, you know, rescue and fire to be able to get in a little bit better. I mean,
Right.
there's some tight spots in town, but I think that moving forward with what we have in place, we generally take care of that with hammerheads and loops. You know, trash collection, you know, does that help us at all? I mean, does it take away from the trash guys that have the private dumpsters? I mean, what's the real advantage, I guess, to the town and its people? And then what's the cost associated with that advantage, if there is any, you know, having that
No,
extra work?
those are great questions, Kyle. Unfortunately, I don't even know how to address the cost side of that.
Sure.
I think it's easy to address the cost of how much it's gonna cost to produce it.
Yeah.
And probably even Nate could tell us how much it's gonna cost to maintain it.
Yep.
Right? But on the flip side is, what's the cost of the fire and rescue saving, 2 minutes in a response?
Mhm.
You're not gonna be able to quantify that.
Absolutely, no, I
You know,
agree with that, yeah.
Or, you probably could quantify it a little bit of the trash collection, because based upon X number of miles
Right.
saved, right? But that is gonna be a growing number. If it catches on and goes,
Right,
that will be increasing. So, off the top of my head, I would say that it's not a money-saving
yeah,
proposition. It's more of a convenience and safety.
yeah,
The kid spends half an hour on the bus instead of,
right.
45, 50 minutes on the bus,
Mhm.
right? So what's the savings?
But just in that instance, right, so we extend these roads out, and then our bus routes all run longer. We use more fuel to go down, and instead of picking up at a central location.
Well, you should use less fuel. That's the whole point. If you're driving less mileage, you're gonna use less
Well,
fuel.
if you access those loop roads and you run, say 85 Plains Road 121, we have pickups at, Daggett Drive, Tower Road. Everybody walks down in there. Now, if we have to send a bus up into every one of those, is there any savings to be had?
No, but you wouldn't. That would.
They would just still
Yeah,
continue, okay,
sure.
yeah. Fair enough.
All right, so how do we proceed? I think we'll have to make sure Jim listens to the CD here.
Yeah,
Let's not let Mary
we'll bring him
transcribe
up
this
to,
one.
yeah, I'll bring him up to par on that and see, I think we'd wanna get some input from, it sounds like need to kind of really focus on what we're gonna do for cutoffs, what we'd like to do, and then maybe Jim can get it in a presentation enough that we could kind of start to mold it into something.
Yeah, maybe Jim could pick what he likes best. And either you or him talk to the other towns as to what problems they've had
Mm-hmm.
with it. You know, the 5 towns that have it, as to whether or not, you know, how it's worked.
Yeah.
And what problems they've had. And maybe we could try to work that stuff out of our proposed ordinance.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are we thinking about doing this retroactively to existing subdivisions or
No.
only new?
No.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
good sense, I think.
And I think one of those things we want to kind of put in there is somehow, Scott, for whether or not it's going to be a mandatory or whether or not it's voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
And is it going to be mandatory with conditions that the planning board can say, you know, these conditions are not met, or these conditions are
Yep.
indeed met, and this has to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know just about every subdivision that we did in Gorham, it was paved. But most of those were probably 20 to, no, there was some probably around the 10 range that they paved the roads.
10 homes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seemed to be the biggest, but a lot of people paved them anyway, even the ones that had just 1 or 2 houses on it, because they wanted it paved. But
Gorham's a little bit different market as well.
Oh, yeah.
For
You
sure.
know,
That's what I mean. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing is that you're trying to embrace that Raymond might be in that situation. And it's better to kind of be proactive rather than
Exactly.
wait till it gets here and then like, oh,
Right.
all right, now we got to figure it
Right.
out. Basically, be in the mess that Wyndham had, like cleaning up with some of their roads. I mean, we've got a little bit of it
Right.
now, and some of these camp roads are always going to be like that.
Right.
But,
And we learned a lot during our last cycle
yeah.
on the subdivisions.
So then Jim's here when he gets back.
Okay,
And,
and we could get something, just, you know, just a draft, at least start looking at.
Mhm.
So Kyle can pick it apart for us, tell us how much.
It's a good picking.
Get all his buddies to pick it.
Yeah. Yeah, they will too.
No, actually, though, but your comments are, I mean, they're important.
Yeah.
Because we do need to look at the other side.
Well, I mean, the most important thing when we look at, you know, developing land is the cost of that road. You know, that road is ever so important, because a lot of people just walk away when those, restrictions get too much, or the cost of it gets too much, where there's just not enough margin on it. And I'd hate to see, you know, we want to see some paced growth here, but I'd hate to
Right.
see it just be stomped out because of, you know, just not be able to get that road in, or that being the tipping factor where we can't have some more revenue in the town because of it, you know. But I also see your side of it, you know, where trash collection response with the emergency services, and so, and if we could find I think it's just about making sure that we find a happy medium. We're not scaring people, but we're not, you know, we're saying, hey, we're not being unreasonable about it either.
Exactly.
This is what we're trying to meet in the middle.
Right.
I think if we can find that blend, I think we'll be just fine.
Okay.
You know, making it optional would make a huge difference in that regard. It'd leave it up to the developer to decide if they're gonna make the connection or not.
Yeah.
Well. I
They're
mean-
not every time.
I mean, from my standpoint, it would never happen.
Yeah, I was
You
gonna
know,
say,
Yeah.
you almost kind of, yeah,
We-
you
yeah.
want to nudge them in the right direction is
right,
what you want to
right.
do, yeah.
Yeah, but there may be some carrots that we could hold out,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
to the developer,
Yeah.
as far as lot size, as far as frontage on the
Yep, exactly.
private, you know, frontage on the town road, I mean, those things.
Yeah.
Or we could do, that if you get another 2 lots out of the deal,
Exactly.
it might be worthwhile.
Just like just like anything else with develop, if there's a give and take feel to the relationship, I think that, you know, it'll be just fine.
Okay.
As long as I've been on a few things where it's like, no, this is how we do it, and, you know, we'll just, okay, well, we'll see you next time.
So I'm a little concerned about, it seems to me if someone starts a new subdivision, it seems to me those people who are buying those lots and those houses ought to be on notice that there could be another subdivision that's gonna be connected, and so people are gonna be driving through to that other subdivision.
Yes,
I think that's important.
I agree, yeah.
How are you gonna predict that, though? I mean,
Well, I
with
think-
land ownership and
I'm not,
subdividing and what's gonna happen 20 years from now, who knows?
I'm not saying that you're gonna know that, I'm just saying that people ought to know it's a possibility.
No,
Yeah, if they're on a town road,
Right.
it's possible that they're,
If we're leaving a dead end on a subdivision, then it should have like a designated right-of-way for a future extension, then, that would indicate to everyone that
Yeah.
it is a possibility.
Yeah, there's still gonna be, till it goes in there, they're not really gonna think about it, and that's usually when I get a call.
Yeah.
So, but, like I said, there's not gonna please everybody, so.
No.
Okay.
all right?
Well, we're not gonna solve it tonight.
No, I think we're on a good start, though.
Did that gentleman get his stuff in front of the planning board?
No, there's no plan.
I haven't seen anything from him yet.
Okay.
He has until Friday.
Okay, we might have something new. I think he's gonna try to get on the docket, but we don't know yet for planning board next time. It's, something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, Port Harbor Marine, is thinking about expanding their docks. After talking with DEP, it's considered an expansion of a marina, which goes to planning board.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a calculation slips per?
I can't remember how many they're gonna add, but they have a total of 100, I think it's 120. They wanna do 2 docks out, 92 feet straight out, with slips on either side.
Is there going to be parking then?
Well, that's one of the things
calculation?
we're probably gonna have to figure out, cause
Yeah.
I don't know how they park now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know how they do it, but I never see any traffic there, so I don't know how they do it. I don't know if that, he's got that, I don't know if that area where he stores boats in the winter becomes parking in the summer. That's one thing I don't know, but that would be one thing we'd have to address with all these more boats. What's that gonna do to parking? Yeah. So, yeah. He has till the 10th,
Friday,
Friday.
the 11th.
So that would be the only new thing.
Unless Dustin
Oh,
comes
unless
in with
Dustin
one of
comes in,
his.
he's got another one.
I don't know where the man sleeps.
I think that one might, I don't think they're in a really big hurry on that one, but that's off of, around by Patricia Ave, and it abuts Wyndham.
So what I mentioned to Dustin long before your time is when we were doing 2 or 3 subdivisions a night, there started to be a tendency for the developer or the applicant, whatever, to bring in new and revised documentation and hand it out to us at the beginning of the meeting. And it just got to be the point where you had no time
To look at
it, to view it. So that's why we pretty much had that standard rule that we don't accept anything the day of the meeting. So if you could kind of just,
Yeah, reaffirm that with him,
Reaffirm
yeah.
that. all right, anything else? Ready to go? Oh, you already made the motion?
Yeah.
Am I missing it?
Yeah.
Was there a second? You said so.
No, there wasn't.
Oh, there's a second now. All those in favor? Done. I already made the motion. I missed